Working It Out, a podcast show about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplaces, our communities, and our lives. A show where we put diversity and inclusion to work.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out. Dr. V.
Welcome, I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver. On this episode of Working It Out, we'll hear the personal story of an accomplished professional who has overcome adversity. The pathway to success may have many roadblocks such as discrimination, bias, or other potentially career-derailing experiences. My guest today will share his personal story, describe how he persevered, and explain how the experience has shaped who he is today. So joining me today is the marvelous Theo Peoples. Theo is an accomplished soul singer and songwriter. And what he's most renowned for, other than being a great son and a wonderful husband, is that he was both the lead vocalist for the Temptations and the Four Tops. There's been no person that's been the lead of either group in the history of Motown. He has been the lead voice on songs that I love, like This Is My Promise, Stay, and just a lot of other incredible songs from both the Temptations and the Four Tops. And interestingly, an unknown fact, Theo, is that you were the son of a preacher.
Yes, I am.
In St. Louis, Missouri.
That is correct.
So tell us a little bit about you and how you got started in the business.
Well, I actually got started doing music at my father's church. I've been playing piano since I was like 8, and you know how proud parents, oh, you can play the piano. So they got me lessons, and I used to play the Lord's Prayer, but I didn't know how to play the piano that well. So I struggled through the piano part of the Lord's Prayer, and then I would run outside and start crying. And he just kept pushing me and pushing me. Oh, you can do it, son. And I developed the courage that I needed to do what I do now. But, you know, I did not like my father back then for those things, but now I love and respect and cherish him for pushing me to that point. And now I see what he was trying to do for me. So.
And did he also push you in terms of being a singer and a performer?
I didn't start singing until I was actually 19 years old. I didn't even know I could sing. The lady at the church who was the minister of music at the time, she wanted me to sing this particular song. And I'm like, Angela, I don't know if I can sing. She said, well, we're going to try it this Sunday. And I sang the song, and people started shouting. And I guess at that point, I figured out I could sing. So,
well, if you get people to shout in a Baptist church, that's the affirmation, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So then you started singing at 19, and then what? I mean, so how did you get to the Temptations and then the Four Tops? What happened?
Well, I started doing music professionally, and my first job was at a piano bar, like a 5-star restaurant called the Seventh Inn. And when I took that job, at that point, the church had mixed emotions about me playing for the 5-star restaurant and the church. So they said, well, you can't play for the devil and for God. I said, well, the devil pays more money. If you could pay me what the devil is paying, then I'll play for the church. And
did you really say that?
Uh-huh. And inevitably, I got kicked out of the church.
Oh, I see.
God gave me this gift, and I feel that there's no reason why I cannot use it to provide for my family. Mm-hmm. So his words of being the devil, I paid no thought to that. And it just so happens I was performing at a hotel in St. Louis, and the Temptations were doing a private function for the St. Louis Zoo, but they happened to be staying at the hotel that I was performing at. So one of the members came downstairs to the lounge, and I guess to have a drink, and he heard me singing and playing, and we exchanged phone numbers, and he told me who he was. And I said, oh, this is great. He said, you know, you've got the potential to be one of the Temptations, and I'd like to present your phone number to Otis. I said, okay, fine. 6 months later, Otis calls and offers me a job to sing with the Temptations. And it was so exciting for
Real.
me. Yeah, I didn't have to audition, well, I did have to audition, but there was not a line of people that I was competing with. It was like I was handpicked, and they taught me the steps. It took me 6 months to learn the steps, and I became a Temptation.
And what did that feel like being a Temptation? I mean,
Oh, I
we
was
see
on
all
top
the
of,
glory, all of the excitement, people shouting and,
I was on top of a mountain, and at that time, my wife and I, we were dating, and she was happy for me, but she thought that I was never going to see her again. And here, 27 years later, we're still together.
oh, wow. That's fabulous. So you go from, you're with the Temptations, what, 4 or 5 years?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And so
6
what
years.
happened you go from the Temptations to the Four Tops? Because that's highly unusual, highly irregular. What happened?
Well, I kind of got a little overzealous with the excitement of being the Temptation. I start taking advantages of all of the things that you're not supposed to take advantage of: the drugs, the women, the lifestyle. If you have any weaknesses, the road will bring it out. And inevitably, I missed a curtain call, and the Temptations had to let me go.
Wow.
But the Temps and the Tops were performing together all over the world. So we were always traveling as a group. And when the Four Tops heard that the Temptations were letting me go, I believe I was playing golf with Duke and Obi, and they said, well, we want you to get yourself together, Theo. And we're going to give you 6 to 8 months, to do your rehab treatment and all of that. And then we're going to call you to see if you could replace Lawrence Payton, because he had already passed. And the Four Tops were performing with 3 members. So there was a 4th slot open.
So you had this adversity, you had some personal work that you had to do that caused you to leave the Temptations. And so how did you handle that? Because that must have been a letdown for you. You're at the top of your career with the Temptations, and you get let go. So how did you handle that?
Well, at first, it was first of all embarrassing. And I had to own up to my actions. And with that being said, I had to reassess my life. And with doing that, I realized that I had lost the spiritual part of my life that I was growing up with my father in the church. And I let all of that go and just started doing what I wanted to do instead of, having some type of structure and discipline like I was taught. So I had to readdress that. I had to go to rehab for, 90 days. And I was an inpatient, so it wasn't like go there and come home. I had some serious issues. So with that and reevaluating and getting my spiritual life back in check, shortly after that happened, one of the Four Tops reached out to me to check to see how I was doing. And he told me, we really want to utilize you, but we got to make sure that you're 100%. And I said, I think I'm where I should be. So he called Otis Williams. I think it was Duke of the Four Tops called Otis Williams of the Temptations to make sure that the Temptations were not going to hire me back. I guess it was out of respect because of the 2 groups always touring together. And after that phone call was made, I get a phone call from Otis Williams. Now all of a sudden he's checking on me and wanting to know how am I doing, and we want to put you on a retainer. I said, well, what do you want to do that for? Well, we just want to look out for you, and make sure that you're okay. But he didn't know that Duke had already called me and offered me the job. So I ended up turning down his retainer's fee because what the Four Tops offered me was per show. What the Temptations was paying me was per week. So that was a no-brainer for me.
Mhm.
So at that point, I became a member of the Four Tops.
So you've left the Temptations, you kind of took care of your personal business and, you know, did the work on you that you wanted and needed to do. And now you're with the Four Tops. So how was that?
It was very interesting, the first show.
That's a clinical word, interesting.
Okay, I'll clear that up in a bit. It was interesting because, you know, our dressing rooms would always be down the hall from each other or anything like that. And when I did my first show, before I walked on stage, I went to the Temptations dressing room to say hi to everybody. And I believe Ron Tyson said, "Uh-oh, we got an enemy in the camp." So we were very competitive, the two groups, on who could outdo each other in each particular show. And so it just felt strange for me to be on another team on the same stage with a group that I used to work with. And here I am with the group that we used to compete against.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I mean, it was healthy fun, but it was just felt strange to me. Yeah. So after the first couple of shows, I kind of got over that, and there was no animosity between the two groups, and we continued on. And overall, Otis and the Temps, they were happy that I had got myself together, and so they were really looking out for my welfare, and I appreciate them for that. And we're still friends to this day.
Well, we've been talking about in a series of the shows the importance of relationships. And I know in the work that I do in alignment strategies, we talk about this with multicultural people and women all the time, the need to cultivate relationships with people because those relationships will endure long past points of change. And I'm hearing the same thing in the conversations about the industry. People know you, you have a brand that you've established, and you can leverage that. So this is great. So you with the Temptations. Now, you didn't start as the lead of the Temptations, right? I mean, the Four Tops.
No. Lawrence Payton had passed, and they were working for the past 3 or 4 years with three. So they weren't going to replace him out of honor of having him in that position. But they heard that I was leaving the Temps, and offered me that spot. So I sang background for the Four Tops for about 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And then at some point, from background to...
Well, we were on our way to Las Vegas, and Levi Stubbs, you know, his health was kind of failing him. He had been performing for 47 years, and you could just see him struggling while we were going through the airport, and sometimes we'd have to get him a wheelchair, and he was just, I believe he was just tired. And when we got to Las Vegas, we were there for 6 nights. And on the 6th night, he blindsided us and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been performing for you for over 47 years. And no one knows this yet, but I want to announce this will be my last show. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you Theo Peoples."
Wow.
Oh my God. It was like on the spot. So I didn't even know his words to the end of the show. So I'm so in awe of what's happening here. So at that point, he had passed the torch to me, and he retired after that show.
And you sang with him for how long after that?
Oh God, a total of 12 years.
Theo, earlier you talked about your own personal adversity and how you overcame that, and I'm so grateful for that story. But what do you see as some general adversity in the industry, in the music industry, that young people need to really know about and understand?
In this industry, they are looking for people who are able to take direction. So if you're not able to do that, you're really just wasting your time. I mean,
like what kind of direction, for example?
Well, you have to follow instructions. You can't go in with, "I'm this big shot and I do things my way." You know, there's a chain of command. There's a producer, there's a director, there's a promoter. If a record company picks you up, there used to be artist development. back during the days of Motown. I don't know if they have that as of right now, but you can be the most talented person on the earth, but if you're not able to take direction, you can't be used.
Okay. Okay, so being able to take direction.
Yes, that would
You
be
know,
more.
and what would happen if someone is interested in being in the industry and they're like issues of discrimination or being treated differently? Does that still happen now? And how does it show up?
You know, I've had one instance with the Four Tops where I've had a discriminatory issue. And it wasn't with the group at all. It was where we were at that particular time. We were down in Florida, and something had happened to me. So I pushed that down, but racism does exist. So there's nothing you can do about it. It's been here since the dawn of man, and it's going to be here. So you can't change people's minds. You can't change people's hearts, but that's no reason that we shouldn't try. So I see a race, a human race, all colors. That's how I see life. But everybody doesn't look through my glasses. So if I was to give some advice to a young person coming up, you know, be solid with who you are, have your spirituality in check, and follow instructions.
Follow
Take
instructions.
direction.
Take directions and follow instructions. That's something I'm trying to practice more of myself. Thank you for that. You know, I was curious in the incident that you said that happened in Florida. It struck me when you said you kind of pushed that down. What does that mean when you say you pushed it down?
Well, I was very, very angry, and I couldn't do anything about it, but something was done about it, and I felt better about it. So I pushed all of that resentment down, and it was really at a golf course in Florida. And there's a friend of mine named, oh God, what's his name? Scott Tolley, and he's Jack Nicklaus' right-hand man, the golfer. So they design golf courses all over the world. And Scott told me, he said, Theo, any Jack Nicklaus golf course that you want to play at, you give me a call and I'll set it up for you. So we were in Florida for a 3-day weekend at the same venue, and Scott sets up a round of golf for us at this very nice country club. And so my friend and I, we hopped in a cab and we went to this golf course. It's in a gated community. Well, when we got up to the gate, there was an old white man at the gate, and he said, what are you gentlemen here for? I looked at my friend, he looked at me, and he said, we're here to bowl. I said, don't be like,
bowl?
Bowl. You know, he sees golf clubs in the backseat.
Yeah.
He was just being, you know, him. I said, sir, we have a tea time, such and such a time, blah, 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 blah. Well, I doubt that's going to happen. So he picks up the phone and calls the pro shop. Sure enough, we have a tea time. He did not want to let us into that gate, but he did. When we get to the pro shop, no one was in the pro shop to wait on us. Absolutely nobody. And I'm like, is anybody here? And I yelled that at the top of my lungs, and this little kid comes out, and he's so scared and he's shaking. And you could tell that he was put in this position to help us because whoever the person was that ran that shop didn't want to deal with us because of the color of our skin. So we get our clubs, we get on the first tee box. And as we're teeing off, my friend looked behind us and he said, Theo, look at the audience of people looking at us. And it was like everybody came out of the clubhouse and watching these two black guys tee off on the first hole. Well, anyway, we got through that. And that night at the show, Scott Tolley came to the show. He said, Theo, how did you enjoy the round? I said, Scott, I loved the course, but I didn't feel well received. And he said, what did you mean? And so I shared with him just what I shared with you. He said, are you here tomorrow? I said, yeah. He said, do me a favor, go back. So we went back to the golf course the next day. The old gentleman at the gate was fired. The person at the golf course was the general manager. He gave us free t-shirts, hats, balls, pretty much anything we wanted, shoes. And when we teed off, he had a cart girl drive with us from hole to hole. Any beverages or food we wanted, she was like handling it personally. And that made me feel a lot better about that situation. So that's why, I mean, when, you know, sometimes you don't have to say anything, and you just let go and let God, and things will work out. But, you know, I could have acted a fool, but always maintain your dignity. That's important.
Maintain your dignity. So did you ever talk with Scott about that after the difference with the first visit and the second visit? What did Scott say?
He told me he made some changes, and I am so sorry you had to go through that. And Mr. Nicholas does not want that for any of his golf courses, and he's got courses all over the world. So I felt really redeemed and respected at that point. So
well, thank you for sharing that, because that could, you know, sometimes like when you say push it down, I know in our work and when we're doing the supporting, you know, Black and brown people in corporations, Asians and women, a lot of times they do push down. They have these incidents and they push it down because, like you said, you want to maintain your dignity, and you don't really want that to be the center of why people are interacting with you. Right. But we find oftentimes that becomes a pattern of coping. You know, push it down, push it down, push it down. You sure didn't do that. You spoke your truth to Scott, who invited you to go there. But so I'm so glad you shared that story, because it's important for people to know that when those incidents happen, it's important to acknowledge them and deal with them in some kind of way, so that doesn't really cripple you, you know, or it doesn't continue to pile up to the point that there is some explosion and you don't even know why you exploded. It just at some point you just like
exactly
you know, lose it. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I'm surprised and really pleased that you haven't had a lot more incidents like that in your career. I mean, spanning 6 years with the Temptation and 12 years with the Four Tops. My goodness, and 20 years. That's been the experience for you. That's really a blessing. That's a blessing. So as we look at wrapping up, what would be, you know, you talked about be able to take instructions and maintain your dignity. Is there any other closing point that you would like to make to young people who will want to follow or get into the industry?
Well, I would say don't let the job become you. It is just a job. So when you walk off of that stage or whatever part of the industry you're in, you're back to being a human being, or you're back to being regular people. You don't need to be spoiled and pampered and on all of this. You know, it's a job. Leave the ego up on the stage.
I see.
You know, people are hard to deal with when they have to be a star when they walk out their front door.
And that advice is relevant whether you are dealing with performing with the Temptations, Four Tops, or you become an executive in an organization. I mean, it's all about how do you really stay in touch with who you are and be your authentic self so others can relate to you as such. Yeah. So Theo, I just thank you so much for your time and the transparency of your story. So many people are going to benefit and be touched by that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I wish you continued success with Voices of Classic Soul, which is the group that you're now with, correct?
That is correct.
And so if people want to find out more about you, they could go to where?
I believe it's voicesofclassicsoul.com or theopeoples.net. We've got several avenues to be reached at.
Yeah, that's great, because now you're performing with Joe Coleman, who was the lead vocalist of the Platters, and Joe Blunt, who was the Drifters, and you're doing the Temptations and the Four Tops element to it. Yes. So it's got to be, I know it is, I've seen the show, a fabulous show. So again, thank you. And on behalf of me and my team, we're going to close out our show today. Be safe, happy, and blessed.
Working It Out is brought to you by Alignment Strategies, a management consultancy with more than 3 decades of experience in diversity, equity and inclusion, and organizational development. To learn more, visit alignmentstrategies.com.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out.